Like many of us, I imagine, over the course of this pandemic, I found myself retreating to my favorite stories. By returning to the characters and events that I had grown to love over many years, I found solace and familiarity during this time of uncertainty and fear. It wasn't until I returned to two major and much beloved franchises that I realized something was wrong. Something was very wrong. I knew I would arrive at this crossroads eventually, but I suppose I had just been fooling myself so I would enjoy the ride. Two highly anticipated installments of two emotional stories, both featuring a diverse cast of characters and continuing a gripping story of survival against incredible odds. But these installments would come to change everything I held dear. I am, of course, talking about The Last of Us Part 2 and Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi. Just like that, it all came back to me. The subversion of expectations, major character deaths, the interrogations and reversals of good and evil. It was all too much to bear. But even after stepping away from the screen, I couldn't stop thinking about it. There was something more to both these seemingly completely different stories that bound them together and made them more alike than I had previously been willing to admit. There had to be some unifying element, some creative catalyst that had transformed my favorite stories into something that I could hardly recognize. So rather than walk away and pretend it never happened, I went back to them. I studied and analyzed everything I could think of. Similarities in character, plot, theme, format, even score. I held up both stories to the light and examined everything about their development, creation, and execution. And when all was said and done, I could hardly believe what I uncovered. So deceptively simple and yet so devastating, it had been hiding under all our noses all along. The reason for the failures of The Last Jedi and The Last of Us Part 2 is not due to their characters or story, but because of the presence of the words "the" and "last" in their titles. And that's when I realized it was bigger than just these two. Throughout the history of film, TV, and gaming, not one, not two, but several major releases in other blockbuster franchises have also contained "the" and "last" in their titles. And with very few exceptions, those releases have been catastrophic failures. Transformers: The Last Knight, X-Men: The Last Stand, The Last Airbender, prequel series, all miserable failures that killed their respective franchises dead in the water and turned its characters into laughingstocks. Even Martin Scorsese's 1988 The Last Temptation of Christ brought the Jesus franchise to a screeching halt until the gritty reboot of 2004. Despite the power of this effect, it only seems to happen in instances of major franchises with more than one entry in its canon. A single movie with "The Last" in its title rarely fails critics and audiences on the scale of a sequel with the same words in its title. In the case of The Last Black Man in San Francisco, that movie was good, and if you say it wasn't, you're a racist. I did not see The Last Black Man in San Francisco. There are the rare occasions in which the opposite effect occurs, and the franchise is actually saved by the installment with "The Last" in its title. For instance, the flawless 1991 action film The Last Boy Scout is actually a sequel to the abysmal Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, as foreshadowed within the early minutes of the latter movie. Now, I'm not the only one who knows about this effect. In the case of The Last of Us, the effect was subverted from the beginning. In a genius move by Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog, they elected to make the title of the first game in the series The Last of Us, thereby avoiding the curse of the last for the first game and completely and thoroughly explaining why the sequel was such flaming dog shit. In this regard, The Last of Us succeeded where The Last Jedi failed. By calling his film The Last Jedi, dumb and bad director-screenwriter Rian Johnson doomed the Star Wars saga to mediocrity by putting "The Last" in the title of his Star Wars movie. So what does this mean for the future of titles? Will we never be able to see a movie, play a game, or watch a TV show with the words "The Last" in it? Does that mean we'll never truly get a conclusion to our favorite tales? Yes, that's exactly what it means. Until we, the fans, are completely satisfied, the effect of The Last will continue, and we will only have perfection to look back on. And that's why Marvel movies never used "The Last" in their titles.